Welcome back to the Relationship Mentors podcast. We are on episode number 15. And today we're going to be talking about things we're still working on in our relationship. I think this is such an important one because the connection you build with someone, it's often based on their imperfections. It's like when you have a dog and that dog passes, you think of, oh, remember the time the dog shat on the mat? Remember the... Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you have it's about the imperfections. Like the things I love about you are the things that I'm like, why does she do that? But it makes you so unique.
Yeah.
And like we started this whole podcast for the reason of people forming a connection with us. And it's like, it's hard to build a connection with someone that's just, they look perfect on the outside. So like you can't get on the inside.
Tell you all our imperfections today.
This is all our imperfections. So we're going to go through them one by one. And yeah, it's like how you're perceived from the outside versus what goes on the inside can be completely different. Like I had someone message me yesterday. I put on my stories that I'm doing a speaking gig. We're doing a speaking gig next week. And he messaged like, oh, how'd you do the speaking gigs? Like, how'd you get into it? Oh, you must be so confident. Like you must never feel nervous. Where I'm there like shitting myself for the speaking gigs. Like how you're perceived from the outside versus what's going on the inside can be completely different, right?
And even on that note as well, because like I am with you 24/7 and even I perceive you as very confident. Like you're always doing podcasts, you're always like speaking at events, you're always like out
Client calls and stuff.
Yeah, always talking. You always just seem so confident. And I wouldn't know that you're nervous before or certain things. And it's only because you're nervous because you care so much and you want to give so much value. But I wouldn't know that unless you shared that with me after the fact.
That's so interesting. There is such a disparity there, hey?
Yeah, because I believe we both are quite confident people. There is just still that nervousness because we care so much.
It's such a thing in society of pedestaling other people. It's like putting other people on pedestals means you put yourself in the pit. It's like you put yourself below them in the way. And there's been so many people along my journey where I've pedestaled them so much, like, wow, they're amazing. They've got no problems. They've like smashing it in life. I bet nothing goes wrong in their life. And then a lot of them are my closest friends now. And you're like, oh, wow, they're literally the same as us.
Yeah.
So anyone you see online, anyone you see like artists online or actors or TV presenters, anyone, it's not like they are good at this because they are just born with this. It's like they're still battling insecurities. They're battling lack of confidence. Yeah,
there's so many things that are happening in other people's lives. And I do love, it's so nice to feel like, oh, they have it so easy because they just like, they have so much money. They can do anything. They don't have to worry about these problems that I'm facing. But the reality is they probably are facing very similar problems or just very different problems, but they're still facing problems overall. It's like no one gets off easy in life.
You just adopt a new set of problems, hey?
Yeah, it's just like this.
Yeah, if I was listening to this, I'd be like, oh, but they don't have to go out and work like 9 to 5. It's like, yeah, motherfucker, but we work till 10 o'clock at night most nights.
And it's like, and it's the life that we chose. We both have worked our 9 to 5s, which was like 6 o'clock to like 6:30 at night.
Fuck
so
yeah.
It's like
we've done enough of that.
Yeah, we've worked for other people long enough.
And it's the risk, right?
Exactly, 100%. Okay, so let's get straight into the first thing that we're still working on.
Mixing business with relationship. Did you ever feel like you would do business with someone you're in a relationship with?
Well, now that we have been doing business and relationship for so long now, I can't see it. I can't imagine it any other way because I know how great it is now and how well we work together with it. However, I guess like 5 years ago, I never would have thought I'd be in. I feel like 5 years ago, I was too independent to be like, I would ever go into business with a partner because I'm like, no, it's my money. It's my business.
Yeah.
I feel like that was very much my personality back then. Very hyper independent. But
we spoke about that on last week's podcast, didn't we?
Yeah.
The hyper-dependence. And when you move through your relationship, it just reveals more layers to you. And when you're going through a relationship, when you're just dating, there's not much pressure. You're not living together. You're not doing these things. And then you make it, then you go all in, you commit to this relationship. That brings up shit for you. And then you move in together. That brings a whole nother layer to the relationship and it forces you to grow. And then you throw a business on top of that. It's like, fuck, there is so many more layers to reveal about ourselves here. And that's going to bring up arguments. That's going to bring up triggers. And then imagine like throwing a baby on top of that, throwing traveling on top of that. Like there's so many things, if you throw it on top of the relationship, it's going to cause stuff, right? It's like you have this system think of it like a submarine. You've got a submarine, and if there's little cracks in the submarine and you send it down under the deep pressure of the deep water, then it's going to crack. It's going to reveal those cracks, right? So it's like when you have this relationship, it really gets tested when you throw these pressures on top of it, like moving in together, like building a business together.
Yeah.
And it's definitely revealed some stuff for us, right?
Yeah. And it's like, to go back to the question as well, like mixing business with the relationship. I think the fact since we have done it now, it just feels so normal. It's like we spoke about this in the last episode as well. It's like the moment something happens, it becomes normal really, really quickly. It's like once you achieve something, it just feels normal automatically, like pretty quickly. So I feel like, yeah, something that we are still working on is mixing business with the relationship. I feel like we do a phenomenal job. Like I feel like we do it really, really well. And there's just like moments we've just gotten so good and well at setting boundaries of sometimes we're going for a walk and it's just like, okay, I need you not to talk about business right now. And we just need to be a couple for this next hour.
Yeah.
So I feel like now we're just a lot more in tune with, okay, what are we actually needing right now? And I feel like you could talk about business 24/7 and be great. And then I definitely need just like a few hours every now and then that we do not talk about business and you just talk about a couple, like if we're just in a relationship, talk about our friends, talk about this, talk about like any news that you've heard.
Yeah, it can be a bit consuming kind of business. And it's very intertwined. Like we wear a lot of different hats in the relationship. We're friends, we're housemates, we're business partners, we're lovers.
We're enemies.
We're enemies, we're friends. Like we've got all these things. So it's like swapping these hats every now and then. Like it's trying to intertwine all of that is a challenge. And it's definitely been a challenge for us where like, for me, business is always on my mind. It's always ticking. I'm always thinking about something. So when Mia wants to talk to me or be entertained, she's like, talk to me, entertain me. What's on my mind is business. So I'm like, right, I need to swap lanes. Like, what else can I talk about other than business? But then a lot of the time I find myself just talking about business to you constantly, and it just deteriorates our relationship. Like it just turns us into business partners and we forget about the intimate relationship. So it's like swapping sometimes, because it could be like 10 o'clock at night and we're working on our laptop and we're like, fuck, we need to take the business partner's hat off and put the intimate relationship hat on.
It's not something that we necessarily wrote down, but definitely something like I love just to chat for hours. Not that we really do that anymore unless it's about business, but I do just love sitting down and just chatting with people. And I find that Charlie, since he always thinks about work so much, but I'm like, just talk to me about things that aren't work. Just like start a conversation about something. And I feel like that's something that we're definitely working on.
Yeah, and I feel like the rest of this list really falls under business, because I was going to go deeper into the specific things showing up with business, but I feel like the rest of them really just dives deeper into that.
Yeah.
So number 2 is making time for social life and not isolating ourselves as much.
Yeah, it's like, so we went traveling last year for about like 3 months, which was amazing. And then the moment we came back, since the last place we traveled to was Bali for 6 weeks, and there wasn't much of a routine there. And so we were really missing the routine that we had back at the Gold Coast here. So we were like, okay, the moment we get back to the Gold Coast, I can't wait to like get back into the routine. We'll have a kitchen, we have our own fridge, we have our
Wi-Fi,
gym,
aircon.
Yeah, we have everything in one spot. We have the beach right there. Like everything's so much more convenient.
First world
here.
country supermarkets.
Yeah, we have a car, not just a scooter. And so we were really ready just to like head down and work, super focused, get back into the routine. And we did that for like 8 months. Oh, yeah, it has been like 8 months since then. Now. I think we were like really hyper isolated for like 6 months. And then we're like, okay, like
this isn't healthy.
Yeah, it's like we need to like start bringing back in more socializing. And I think it's great to go hermit mode for periods of your life to like really move the needle forward within business, within a certain goal that you're working towards. However, always make sure that you have a end date to that hermit mode. Otherwise, it gets too normal and you get too used to it. So I feel like lately, maybe for like the last couple of months, we've started going on weekends away and things like that, which has been really nice.
Yeah, because we can get to the end of like, we're like, fuck, it's been 3 days and we haven't spoke to anyone else except for each other and clients online. So it's like, can we actually speak to people in real life? It's just basic things. Like human connection is the best thing for your mental health. Like talking to humans, that's what humans are designed to be, right? In the tribe, talking to each other. So it's like when we feel like shit, we're like, oh, it's obvious why we feel like this, because we haven't spoke to anyone in 3 days, because we've been so focused on this thing. And it's like, why are we doing it in the first place? And I feel like it's great. Like me being 38, looking back at me at 27 now, can be like, I'm really glad I made that sacrifice of really going all in on business, so that our 30s and 40s are so free with the business and the life we've created for ourselves. And still in the moment, it can be like, fuck, this is hard. Like it feels uncomfortable in the moment, right?
Yeah. And then the next one underneath that was being able to socialize and not feel guilty for it. I think especially in that 6-month period where we were super like hermit mode to fully focus on business, I ended up feeling guilty if we'd go socialize because we weren't focusing on the business at that point. I feel like that's something that I've really overcome, because I realized how much I need more social interactions with other people, because it's just like, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely a thing for me as well. Like anyone starting a business, I feel like most people feel this of the guilt if you don't work. Like the entrepreneurial guilt is so, so real. It's like you're building this thing and it isn't where you want it to be yet. How dare you go out and socialize and do things that aren't the goal? How dare you have side tangents and not put energy towards a thing that's getting you closer to the goal? And it's like the thing that flipped in my switch in my head was, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not every day. Boom, 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 boom. Humans were made to sprint, rest, not just go, go, go. But it's like, can you have focus over a 10-year period? I learned about micro focus and macro focus recently. Micro focus is day to day. Can you focus on the task without getting distracted, checking your phone, looking on TikTok, going to the fridge all the time? And then macro focus is, over the next 10 years, can we be really focused on one thing and be the best at that? So yeah, releasing that guilt and realizing it's a long game, and we're in this for the next 30 years, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have to feel guilt for the small moments. Might as well enjoy the journey, right?
Exactly.
Amazing. The next one is Charlie not emotionally dumping on Mia. This is something I speak to clients, and the guy can say, dealing with her emotions is like a second job. Whereas in our relationship, I feel like I'm way more emotional than you are. So it's like you dealing with my emotions sometimes can be a second job.
I feel like we are both emotional. I feel like humans are emotional beings. I believe I carry my emotions internally, and you carry your emotions externally.
Realizing everyone's different, right? Like when I feel things, I love to externalize it. I'll talk about what I'm feeling. I'll want reassurance. I'll want support. I'll want to lean on people. Like that makes me feel good. Whereas Mia maybe has learned from childhood to, when you feel something, keep it inside, work through it on your own, and then get back to normal and then interact with people. So it's two different strategies, and we had to get used to that for a while. And yeah, there's just a lot of external stress in my life. And then I was emotionally dumping onto Mia with that stuff without even warning you before. It's like, not like, hey, I'm feeling this thing. Do you have like 5 minutes to chat about it? I just say, bleh. Like I just word vomit onto you with all these emotions, right?
And like at first, like the first couple times, obviously, is like we're such a supportive team, and of course, it's like you want to chat about it, of course. But then it started happening like a lot more frequently. But it's like I would be happy, or like if we were both stressed about something, there'd be a split moment that I was happy and we were driving in the car somewhere and I felt happy in that moment. And then Charlie would share how he's feeling. And it just felt like I was being like soccer punched with emotions that I wasn't ready to hold at that time. And so now we've just spoken more about that, of just like, it's so always important to like pre-frame someone before you emotionally offload onto them. It's like with your friends, with your family, you always ask like, hey, I really feel like I need to talk to someone about this. Do you have emotional capacity or space for me to share this with you? It's like that one statement is so, so powerful, and it allows the receiver who's about to receive information or maybe like a lot of emotional
weight
to actually check in with themselves to be like, do I actually have space for this right now? And if not, sharing that. Otherwise, it's like if you don't have emotional space for it, you're not going to be a great supportive person for them to talk to right now. And if you do have emotional space for it, that's great. You've then now been able to pre-frame yourself like, okay, I'm about to
Yeah, so
allow this person
pre-frame
to
your
unload on me.
nervous system. It's like,
Exactly.
cool, I know this is coming. Yeah, I've got space. I can do this. Whereas I was really bad, and I'm still working on it. When we're great, we're going on a ride, but there's something on my mind that I need to talk to about it. So it's like, instead of me always killing the mood of sharing the negative things that are on my mind, it's like, can we enjoy the moment and we'll speak about it at another time where I'll pre-frame you, right?
Yeah, always pre-frame, which is great.
Amazing. Next one, Mia feeling safe to cry in front of Charlie.
Yeah, I feel like this sort of goes on to something that Charlie just said before. It's like in my childhood, I've definitely learnt more so to, I would say, suppress my emotions rather than manage them internally. It's been like a lot of years of learning to actually feel my emotions and that it's okay to feel them. It'd be like just I would have no emotions, or I just have a lot of stuff happening internally that I would numb it out so much. So then after many years of like coaching, I would now have learned to realize what emotions are coming up, yet I still process a lot of them internally. And especially then when I'm if I ever need to cry, sometimes I feel like I need to cry, yet my body is so like
it stops you,
performative.
like it resists, doesn't it?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of it is just like, how am I being perceived by people around me? And okay, is this like, I feel like I'm very used to like performing and like, this is how I need to look. This is how I need to look. Crying is not how I want to be perceived by other people. So even like crying in front of you, I feel like has only ever happened a handful of times. And it's just been tears running down my face. I wouldn't say it's like crying.
Yeah.
And so we spoke about this the other day of like some emotional stuff happened and I'm like, oh, I thought I would have really cried in those moments. Yet since I was just around one other person or a couple of other people, I just felt like I was so out of my body in those moments. And I felt like if I was just solely by myself, maybe I would have been able to, it's only when I'm by myself that I feel actually safe to cry, which is really interesting.
I think a big part of that was you had to be the strong one growing up within your family, right? Like growing up, you had a lot of external stress. A lot of people had to lean on you. So if you were like vulnerable, if you were weak, if you were like super emotional, and if you were needing support, not that needing support is weak, but that's how it was perceived growing up. It's like, if I needed emotional support, then no one else could lean on me, and I had to be the pillar in my family, right?
Yeah, I felt like if I was falling apart, everything would fall apart. Like I was the only strong, and not saying this was the case, it's just what I felt like in those moments. I felt like I had to be the strong one because everyone else was falling apart, and I fell apart. We couldn't get anywhere.
Function,
Yeah. So I think from that, and then there's a lot of other layers to that, which are just things that I'm learning to process more of my emotions and know that I feel like I communicate some of my emotions, but communicating them just by words to Charlie, not really with any emotion behind them. So,
and it is a skill. Like, if you're not very good at something, you just need to practice it. Like, things have happened in the past. Like, if Mia got shut down every time she felt an emotion or expressed herself, then as an adult, she's going to have to relearn how to express herself and feel safe to feel those emotions, right? So it's totally normal. Like, if you're struggling with something in your relationship, if you don't know how to emotionally connect with your partner, it's like maybe you never learned how to feel your emotions growing up. And that's something you get to learn, right? That's something you get to work on together. And that's the thing about being a team. It's like, in the relationship with your partner, you get to work on these things together. And that's the joy of it.
Yeah, and it's and this is the reason why, this is a really loud car that just went past, sorry. And this is the reason like why we started what we're doing now. It's like within relationship coaching. The reason why we teach all the things that we teach is so that you can be the best version of yourself and understand yourself and have that self-awareness for yourself and create a great, healthy relationship. So when you guys do have kids, your kids are growing up in a stable household where their emotions are valid and they're not shut down. So it's like now I know all the logistics around it, but since it was such, to not share my emotions was such a safety mechanism that I had for 20 years of my life, or even more than that, like 22 years of my life. Like that's a long time to suddenly be like, okay, well, I know how to do it now, yet it's not going to happen automatically because I've used it as a safety net every single day for 22 years.
Yeah, you learn things, like habits get ingrained into you. If you're right-handed and you've been writing with your right hand for 25 years, imagine just all of a sudden being like, I can write left-handed now. And you just start and your left hand is as good as your right hand. It's never going to work, right? So it's like you need to really practice those things to really strengthen those those pathways in your brain of like, no, it is safe, because things happen in your brain, like an emotion gets felt and then your logical brain attaches a meaning to it. This means you're not safe. This means you need to shut down. This means you get defensive. This means that. Like your brain is one massive, if this, then that machine, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
So it's just relearning that stuff. The next one, I feel like just tied into that, learning to be more in touch with my emotions.
Yeah, I did intertwine both of those together.
Amazing. Next one's you as well. Mia being patient and not as snappy.
I feel like this
Get
is
it, girl.
valid. Yeah, something I feel like it does also intertwine of something that I have learned is
You lost train of thought.
yeah, I just like know that I have been snappy at certain points sometimes. I do believe it also intertwines with not sharing my emotions all the time, because sometimes I can feel an emotion for internally, and then the moment it gets to boiling point, then I'll snap, rather than communicating it when it's starting to annoy me. And like knowing I wouldn't keep something like that for days. It happens within a 10-minute period, right? If Charlie's doing something and it's annoying me, but I'm like, okay, just be patient with it. But I'm not communicating that certain thing is frustrating, or that tapping noise, or
Then I keep doing it.
yeah, and then I just snap and get really angry. But my really angry is just like, and then just like back to this.
You're like a little chihuahua. Like a chihuahua that yaps.
Yeah. And I think it's, sorry to interrupt there, but I also think it's something that I didn't notice I was so snappy until, I don't believe I'm that snappy. However, I didn't even realize that I was getting angry or impatient until Charlie brought it up to me when we had moved in together. And so that made me even more self-aware, because it's like it was just something that I just wasn't aware of. Because I'm like, yeah, I'm angry. Like everyone gets angry at certain points, but realizing that it just from the externally, it seemed like it was coming from nowhere, where internally I'm like, you were doing it for 5 or 10 minutes. Annoying. Yeah.
Totally get that. And people like Mia just did then, which is great. She said, it's like, I made her feel angry, but then she really realized, like, actually I could have communicated what was frustrating me earlier as it was coming up. So I didn't have to get to a point of me having to blow up about it. So in your relationship, instead of being like, he makes me angry, he does this, she does that, why is she always at me all the time? It's like, no, the problem is way before that. If she's getting to a point of needing to shout at you, or if he's getting to a point of needing to be shouted at, it's like, why didn't you communicate before that?
Yeah, and even another example that just came up, like I know in the past sometimes I've just felt like a mental overload, and I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that. Like if, for example, if you're doing work or you're thinking about how busy your schedule is and how all the things that you need to organize, and then someone comes up to you and then asks you, for Charlie it would just be a business question, and if I already felt so mentally drained and had overloaded, and Charlie would come up and ask me like a deep business question that we need to sit down and brainstorm. I think sometimes in the past I've definitely snapped at that as well, and it's not because of anything that you've done. It's just because I felt so overwhelmed in those moments, and it's like, how are you to know that I'm thinking about all these things for the next like 7 days? Yeah, and that in those moments is not for you to notice. It's just for me to regulate my own emotions. Be like, oh, I feel overwhelmed at the moment. I'll come back to you in a moment.
It's those little things we're learning through.
Yeah.
And we only become aware of them. Like you can't work on something you're not aware of. And this is what's great about this podcast. It's like we're just talking about things that we are aware of, so we get to work through these things. And then maybe in like 20 episodes time, if we do something else like this, it's like there'll be a whole another nother layer of things. It's just like there's always another layer, and that's what's great about relationships. It's like we're working through this stuff, we're becoming better people, right? Cool. Next one, Charlie ignoring me and not answering me. I feel like this is like a shutdown thing. Like if I feel like I think this is the little boy in me, like feeling like I'm getting yelled at. And if I feel like I'm not doing a good job or something, I shut down and I ignore you. It's like when you snap at me, in my brain, my ego goes, don't talk to me like that. I'm going to ignore you so you learn not to talk to me like that. Rather than actually communicating, hey, I don't like you when you speak about that.
Yeah. And I think that's like a 1 in the 3rd reason why. Because I think sometimes I could just say something to you and you take it, like I could just say something. It was like, hey, do you want to go to the shops right now? Or like, hey, we need to get like this from the shops. You could sometimes you just take that offensively and you make it mean something else. So I feel like that's 1/3 of the reason. And I think Charlie and I could be having a conversation back and forth, and then Charlie will suddenly unsubscribe from the conversation and just stop. Like it's just in the middle of the middle of the conversation, and he just like stops talking and like stops interacting, and I'm like, what? It's just literally like a Sims. Not that I've ever played Sims, but I imagine just like a Sims character that just someone just
X's out.
Yeah, or just like left the control there and walked out of the room. That's literally just like what happens. And I'm like, are you in this conversation anymore? Or he just like gets up and walks off. And I'm like, oh, like you're the one that started this conversation. Did you get what you need? You didn't tell me if that's the answer that you were looking for.
There is a lot of reasons behind this, Charlie ignoring me. Sometimes I feel like this is where a lot of our arguments stem from. Well, they're more like annoyances than arguments, but
I find it rude.
It's like you say something to me, I did not hear it, and then Mia shouts at me because I didn't answer her. I'm like, I didn't even hear the first one, and then we go back and forth for a little bit, and then we're like, okay, back to love.
Yeah, but it's like in saying that example sometimes can be in the middle of a conversation. So we could be having a conversation like this. I'll ask Charlie a question, just like a normal conversation, like he heard me at the same volume the first sentence before that. It's like, I didn't hear you. Like, so to me, it's like, well, for me, it's like, obviously you heard me. I said it in the same like tonality or the same pitch, but in the sentence prior to that, but you just didn't hear the next one.
Yeah, I feel like
I just feel like Charlie has selective hearing for.
I can definitely tune out. Yeah, I've got big ears, but they're not great at hearing sometimes. Sometimes you talk to me and ask me something. Imagine like 0 is calm, 100 is angry. It's like you talk to me at like a 0, and then if I don't hear you, it jumps up to like a 70. I'm like, fuck, what about like 0 to 70? Can you go up to 10 or 20?
Yeah.
Like sometimes and you can jump up the thing like that. I found.
And I definitely do that. And the reason why I do that is because
you've been ignored in the past.
Yeah, like this is something that's happened ever since we moved in together. And it happens, I'm going to say it happens at least once every 3 days, which is a lot. Like it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's me being kind. It's like once in every 3 days. And it's like, yeah, because we're in the middle of a conversation. Imagine, like you can obviously hear me talking now, and the next sentence he could just not hear me because he's just choosing not to listen.
John Gottman and Julie Gottman, not that this is a bypass for me. They talked about something like 67% of problems are not fixable. It's a person's character.
Yeah.
And sometimes I choose to believe that, sometimes I don't. But in a lot of cases, like loving your partner's imperfections, like I don't hear her a lot of the time. She can get really annoyed about that, and she has every right to. But it's like, maybe you'll have to fall in love with it.
Well, yeah, I've had to deal with it every day of knowing you, so.
Yeah, so me ignoring you is definitely one that we're still working through. Charlie having an ego about washing up. Would you like to start?
Okay. Well, first off, we'll just say the one underneath that, which is something that I am working on, which is just because something's not done the way that I would say it's done doesn't mean it's wrong. I very much believe it's like the way...
The ego is holding that in, wasn't it?
The way that... Obviously, when I do something, I believe it's the best way because I've put a lot of thought into it. Like the way that I have my systems, like I believe I'm very thoughtful and very considerate within the structure that I hold things. And something that used to frustrate me a lot is the way that Charlie would wash up. And then it was a lesson of like, okay, Charlie simply washes up a different way to me. It doesn't mean it's wrong. He's still washing up. But then, so that's something that I need to work on. Just because it's not done my way doesn't mean it's wrong. But then when we get to the washing up side, that was a lesson that I thought I had to learn with Charlie doing washing up. But then I realized even after Charlie washes up, I think the main goal of washing up is to have clean dishes. We do not always have that when Charlie washes up. We still have dirty dishes after Charlie has washed the dishes. So then I think I'm valid in this point of I would love Charlie just to allow me once to show him how to wash up properly in my way, what I call properly, just so then he knows, like, you wipe down, like clean the sink out and everything first, then you fill up the dishwasher, and then there's a sink, and then there's like a process of which ones you should wash up first to like the least dirtiest to dirtiest, and then how it should all go and how you actually stack a drying rack. But Charlie's ego does not want. He's like, I know how to wash up.
It's definitely an immaturity I'm working through that I'm aware of. It's like when you tell me like, no, this is how you wash up, I can lack the humility of being like, fuck, I'm doing all these things. Like, don't tell me I don't know how to wash up. Like, that's so below me. That's how I feel. Like my ego's like.
Do you think it's below when I wash up?
No.
Okay.
It's like needing to know how to wash up is below, not doing the washing up.
Okay.
It's like, it just makes me feel like a little boy like that. And I think that's what sparks like a response.
Yeah. I feel like in our relationship, the thing that we fight about is washing up. Like that's the thing that's like my biggest pet peeve. And the thing that I really don't get is like this has been an issue within our relationship for so long that I simply don't get, because we have these conversations like, why won't you just have 10 minutes of me showing you how to wash up, and then like we would have saved all of these like arguments, because every time I like unload all the dry dishes, I just like have to put them back into the washing up pile because they're still dirty. So I just don't get like stand there for 10 minutes as I show you. It's like probably just 5 minutes. It's not even that.
You've told me before, and I think I'd just go back to the lazy pattern. I think I can get lazy with housework, and that's something that can put stress onto a relationship. It's household chores. When you move in together, you see so much of the other person, how they do everything. Do they leave toothpaste marks on the sink? Do they leave it on the shower? Do they not wash up after themselves? Do they not put lids on things when they put them in the fridge? Like this.
Charlie does not put lids on things. He's starting to. He has.
Yeah,
now.
I'm pretty bad for that. I always think like if I'm eating it the next day, it'll be fine. But I know that's not the best, right? So I feel like I get lazy with housework, whereas Mia wants a standard, and that's what we can argue about. And then when Mia calls me up on the standard, I can feel like a little boy getting told off, and I'm like, fuck that, don't tell me how to wash up.
Can I just share a funny... Okay, no.
Yeah, what? You can share if you want.
So we always get water from our local markets.
Yeah,
so
it comes from a spring.
Yeah, the spring water. And sometimes if we haven't drunk enough water throughout the week, we want to empty out the bottle so we can have 2 empty bottles to refill for the week. So Charlie will just get a really big container, pour the water in, and then put it in the fridge. No lid, no nothing, just put the big bowl of water in the in the fridge. And then all I think is, yuck, that's disgusting. It's going to get all fridge air and it's going to taste disgusting. But no, he just doesn't care. He's like, no, it's fine.
I didn't know
that. Hold up. And so we'll do it. And then I would always fill my water up with that because I'm like, okay, obviously we need to drink that water first because we need to get it out of the fridge ASAP. But then I didn't realize that Charlie actually wasn't drinking that water. So one day he asked me to fill up his water bottle. So I filled it up with the fridge water, that big bowl that had been in the fridge for like 3 days or whatever. And then he's like, yuck, this tastes really gross. And I'm like, do you know why? Because you put it in the fridge with no lid or no nothing. So it's just absorbing all the food that's in the fridge and all the smells that are in the fridge into the water.
I don't think it's just that though. Because we put the jug in the fridge and sometimes I haven't put the lid on that and it tastes fine. I think what it is the containers I put it in have been sat there for a few weeks not being used. And it might be a bit of dust and stuff on it.
That could be
It just
as well.
it tastes like shit. You
Either
can see.
way,
I mean,
it's
can you
not
remember
good.
when it was like a shimmery layer on top of the water? It's like that is not good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's one of them. Where are we at now? Mia learning just because they're doing things differently doesn't mean it's wrong. So I think we went over that one, right?
Yeah, we covered that one.
Cool. Charlie speaking over Mia / overpowering / not listening to her opinion. This is something I'm definitely been called out at a lot of times. I think the speaking across thing, I always justified it with, but I'm excited about the conversation and I really want to add to it. So I cut her across, and then I never go back to ask what she was going to say when I cut her off. Like, cutting off isn't good. And if I did it, I should have asked what she was talking about. She just starts talking. I'm really excited about the conversation. Then I butt in straight away. Then I never go back and ask what she was talking about. So she can shut down with that. And then I'm like, what were you going to say? It doesn't matter anymore. That can be an argument a lot of times, right?
Yeah, and most of the time you never ask, what were you going to say?
No, I don't.
You just...
And then you're angry. I'm like, oh, sorry, did I cut you off? And then...
Sometimes you don't even know. You're just like,
yeah, sometimes I am so unaware of that. Like, I can cut you off, and then you stop talking. I'm like, oh, conversation must be over. And then you're like...
and you just walk off.
then you're like so annoyed at me, and I have no idea. And then she brings it up. I'm like, oh, right, okay. So it's,
And then he goes, I didn't even hear you. And I'm like, yeah, so that's a cycle that comes around in our relationship.
yeah, so there's that. And then the second half of this is not listening to her opinion. We spoke about earlier with business. I really use Mia. That sounds bad. But I really utilize Mia for being able to talk the things that are on my mind, because she's so great at that, for holding space and reassuring me and supporting me. So I talk to her about these things, and then she gives me really good advice on what to do next. And then I go off into day-to-day life and I forget what she says, and I just go back into the same patterns, and I come back and ask her for support again, and she says the same things, and I still don't listen to her.
Yeah,
So I can be really bad at that.
It just makes you feel good in the moment, and you're like, yeah, that's great. And then you just go off, and then it's like the same cycle of me saying the same thing, but then you're not following through with it. Or then even sometimes there's like business advice of what direction we're wanting to take a certain campaign or something like that, or a certain messaging angle within ads or something like that. And it feels like you won't validate my view, like my angle that I'm wanting to go on. And I feel like this is such a great angle. Like, this campaign is something that we should really do. And then it's like 2 months down the track, he'll hear someone else say it and then think, this is so good. And then he'll come to me and present me the idea and pitch it to me as if it was like his idea that he just got from someone else, where like 2 months ago I was trying to pitch that idea several times.
I can be really bad at that. I don't know. With business stuff, it's like a lot of external stresses. There's a lot of things going on, and my brain can really be like in, just in work mode of doing these things. And when you're in focus mode, a lot of the time you can lack so much self-awareness. I can lack so much self-awareness. So that's something we're definitely still working on.
I truly believe a lot of people lack self-awareness, and even people that are self-aware still lack self-awareness in certain areas.
For sure.
Yeah.
There's so much for us to work on as well, like with the self-awareness thing. And this was the main reason about doing this podcast, to be like, we are not perfect. We're still doing these things. So, I think it's a great reason we're doing the podcast.
Yeah. And then the last one was for me to speak up. So it's like, it does lean on the topic of what Charlie just said. But it's like, I feel like sometimes I do allow him just to overpower. It's like there is a balance, like within the relationship. Typically the man is the leader, and the girl, or the feminine, is more like submissive, and I would just say, more submissive. But then when we have a business together, it's like, that's not the dynamic I want. It's like you not being the leader and me being submissive in a business sense, if we're both running this business. And then I feel like that's something that we're navigating, of like, hey, I feel like you're not hearing my opinion when we share like business meetings. Sometimes he thinks they're great. Sometimes he's just in his own head about everything's terrible.
Yeah, then I tell me, like, speak up when something is not right. And then she speaks up. I'm like, whoa, stop having to go at me.
No.
Something that really triggered me a lot, because going about our relationship was, Mia was always in her light feminine, like super soft, super receptive. So like, that's so attractive. That's so nice. That's so nurturing. And then in business, she steps into more of a masculine frame. I can be really straight up, straight talking, not mindful of tonality. And that can hurt me a bit.
Directness. I'm very direct when it comes to business. In a business meeting, I'm a lot more direct. I'm not airy-fairy. Oh, this is nice. I'm just direct and I would say hard hitting.
Yeah.
Like, this is my point. It's clear. There's no gray area. It's black and white. Like, very direct, very clear in what I'm saying.
So Mia really flips from, she's got great flexibility of behavior in that, where can be light and feminine in the relationship, but then she flips to direct. And it's so needed for business. But it took me a long time to get used to that. Because I was like, fuck, that makes me feel like shit. Can you not be this crazy woman? Yeah. Can you be a bit more feminine in business? But actually, it's so helpful, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. This is something a bit different. And I think it's really needed to really talk into what's going on in our relationship. And I know if someone else made an episode about this, I would want to hear it.
Yeah, I feel like I love hearing the insights of people's relationships and what are the things that they're working on, because these are things that we've been working on for a while now, and we're improving them, of course. I feel like I'm a lot more patient than I was a year ago. Yeah, there's still moments when I do get frustrated, and Charlie's washing up has gotten a little bit better.
Thank you, love.
And sometimes when I wash up and I put things away, sometimes they're a little bit dirty. So
sometimes they are.
We hide those ones.
So thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoy this, please leave a review. Please leave a comment. And yeah, it takes 5-10 seconds and it really helps us out, helps us grow this podcast and reach more people. And if you want help in your relationship, in your specific dynamic, there'll be a link below this where you can book a free 30-minute call with us where we can talk into your unique situation and make a plan on how to move past that.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate you guys listening all the way through to these podcasts. Have a great day, guys.
See you next week.